In honor of Felicia Rayborn's stunning bravery, on today's floor, I'm wearing my Impeach Bashir hoodie right here. It's the only shirt I'll wear with his face on it. Breaking down the news for you guys today. What we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about some vetoes have been overcame. School choice light. Surprising passage after applying some scalpel-like pressure. We have the budget passing, overcoming most of the governor's vetoes on the budget. There's two that they didn't bother messing with. Perhaps the governor, they just looked at it and said, hey, ain't worth messing with. But most importantly, overcoming the veto that he said would land them in contempt. So we'll see what happens there. As well, I want to make a comment about the culture wars, as today we saw a big back and forth and a lot of people not understanding a few things about what it means to be a liberty individual on my post about satanic shoes. Funny enough, satanic shoes is where the culture has gone. So, but while I'm going through this, guys, thank you guys so much for joining me. Hit the share button. Go down, hit the share right there. Share it out because I asked you to. Hit the share button. Also, come by the coffee shop. Get yourself some coffee. It's great stuff. Go to brewedco.com, BREWEDCO.com. As well, you can purchase online. And thank you guys for joining us. Also, ABC is doing like is it ABC? Yes, ABC here in Lexington is doing like a Viewer's Choice Award thing. You can go on there. You can nominate Brewed for Best Coffee Shop because I think it would be funny for us to win Best Coffee Shop and make everybody else in the city cry. That's just me, though. But let's get into it. School choice light passes. This is a little bit surprising. So the reason why this was surprising is because it only passed the House originally with right at, I believe, 48 yeses. And remember, to overcome a veto, you have to get 51. And we squeaked it by with exactly 51 votes in the House to overcome the veto on school choice light. So let's remind everybody with what does school choice light do and why is it called school choice light? Well, the first thing it does statewide, it allows people to go to a public school of their choice as long as they have open enrollment. So how it works is that public schools have to serve their area, but after they serve the area, if they have space available for more people to come into the classroom, you can come from out of district and decide to go into that school district. So perhaps your school district's bad, so you think, okay, I'm going to go to this school district over here. Now, normally, that costs you money to do. It's normally done because, your SEEK fund doesn't follow you and things like that. It normally costs you money to do. This would allow the money from the SEEK fund, which is about half of all of our taxes go to education in Kentucky, and it would allow them to follow them to public schools, to other public schools. And what it would also do is allow private donors to donate money to nonprofits to provide means-tested scholarship based upon your ability to qualify for free and reduced lunch to get a scholarship from these programs to go to a private school. Now, many of you out there say to yourself, and this is capped at $25 million. To put that in perspective, for anybody who doesn't know, Louisville or Jefferson County Schools has a yearly budget of $1 billion. That's right. $1 billion is Louisville's public school budget. Okay, and what we're talking about is $25 million of scholarships to go to private schools funded by private individuals that are just simply getting a tax break. And it only applies to counties with more than 80,000 people. Now, the people against this are simply against it because it is a quote-unquote stepping stone to full school choice. School choice, for those who don't know, is a concept that we have to, it's in the state's constitution, that we have to provide public funding for public schools. And while I don't believe government is good for a lot of things, I understand that some things government just kind of has to sort of be involved in. And I understand that the way our founders had set this up, government does have a place in certain things. And one of those things government, according, of course, to Kentucky's founders as well, has a place in is providing education for students. So with that in mind, the arguments against it is that I guess it'll hurt public schools. Now, here's the deal. If you live in an area that has no private schools near you, this doesn't affect you at all. In fact, school choice as a whole is essentially an idea that private schools, people can produce schools, and then the funding for those schools, your tax dollars, can follow the students to whatever school they decide to go to. Not only does this save money because, for an example, a year's tuition at LCA, Lexington Christian Academy here in Lexington, very high quality private school, is around $11,500. This year, for computer classes, Fayette County Schools spent somewhere around, in the same area, $17,000 student. That's a $5,500 difference. So quite frankly, on the fiscally conservative side of things, private schools are able to do it better. A big part of the reason why is because they don't create giant districts. A lot of times, private schools can also be A, nonprofits, but B, as well, they are able to have a principal that isn't has this massive infrastructure of people, such as a giant board of education building like they have here in Lexington. In fact, to service 44,000 students, not including cafeteria workers and a lot of times janitors, it takes 6,000 staff here in Lexington. That is one staff member to every almost 8 students. It's a pretty significant number there. So with that in mind, the reason why these schools are able to do it cheaper, quite simply, is one, they don't have to provide all the same services. What do I mean by that? Well, they can be tailored. So if you want to play football, and this might be a good football school, they might only do football and spend a lot of their money on football while you're able to choose other things. That's just kind of school choice. I think we've all heard about it. So people who are against it mainly because the unions are against it because, well, quite frankly, it removes teachers from their control and it removes their power. Everybody wants to keep their power. But the other reason why people are against it a lot of times is a concern. There's a real concern that if a smaller school district has a private school come in and people in the area start going to that, the public school in that area will not be able to still function because it has set costs such as buildings. And so basically, if you lose 20% of your student body, but it's evenly spread amongst grades, it doesn't really lower your costs. And, to which I say there would be then a market created that somebody would fulfill, that a private company would fulfill. And so what's one reason people are against school choice and they view school choice light as this? But because they view this school choice light bill as a stepping stone to school choice, their arguments against the bill don't make sense with what the bill does. For an example, it would take money away from public schools. Well, the only reason they take money away from public schools is because a student in there that was going to public schools gets a scholarship to go to a private school funded by a private individual that then makes them lose their SEEK money, makes them lose the count of students. So simply put, we want to deprive students of better educational opportunities to make our budgets work. That's the only thing that makes sense with this. Now, like I said, there's that greater school choice argument that they make about it depriving budgets. That's the real argument they want to make. But the thing is this doesn't provide, especially considering this bill only works for counties that have over 80,000 population. This simply doesn't provide that opportunity quite the same way, but you'll hear weird arguments. The other weird argument I heard, though, when I was listening to the floor debate about this, and I wish I'd caught her name because I wasn't paying much attention. I just heard somebody say it, and I was like, oh my gosh, nobody's reading their bills. People are not reading one of the most hotly debated bills of the session, school choice, they're not reading. Let me tell you what this lady said. She stood up and said, now listen, me and my 8 brothers and sisters, she grew up in a very large family, went to private school. And we scrimped and saved and we had to pay for it. And we didn't ask for a government handout from the government to pay our way. While I understand the idea of being against more welfare programs, that is a stupid comment. And it's truly stupid because first, it would actually save the school budget, the overall budget, $4,000 per student, because that, if they're not in a public school anymore, how the Sikh fund works, they don't get that dollar for that head in that school. And since that head is now going to a private school that isn't getting that Sikh fund money, they just bank that $4,000. Okay, so first, if anything, no, this gives money back to the government. And also, you silly woman, and I wish I remember which rep said it. And if somebody watching this right now knows which rep said it, please comment. I hope it's not one I normally like, because this was such a stupid comment from somebody who clearly didn't read the bill. Because if you read the bill, you knew the scholarships came from private people that were donating money to a fund. This isn't a welfare program. It's a scholarship program paid for through tax incentives to rich people, I guess, donating, that then gets handed out by nonprofits that aren't governments. They have set amounts that they're allowed to operate by percentage-wise, but it gets handed out by nonprofits that aren't the government to means-tested, free and reduced lunch, you have to qualify, to means-tested students. That's what this is for. That's how it works. Donations to nonprofits to then give people the scholarships to go to private schools. And the only part government has in any of this is allowing a tax incentive for the individuals to donate that money. But yet you have this idiot who didn't read the darn bill standing up there calling it a government handout program. Guys, if you don't want Brood to bring down the ire on you, if you don't want Kentuckians to think you're a silly individual, if you want to look like you know how to do your job, read the bills. For crying out loud. Please, read the bills that are in front of you. Please read them. Because you just look foolish when you stand up there saying people shouldn't get a government handout when it's not funded by the government. It's not funded by the government. Silly people. Also of note, on that passage, we had 3 flipped votes. Funny enough, a flipped vote first came from Regina Huff. As a reminder, guys, please be sharing the video. If you're newly joining us, hit that share button. I encourage you to. I get a little fired up sometimes, but hit that share button. But you have Regina Huff switching her vote, Gooch switching her vote, and Goforth switching her vote. What's funny about these 3 is they're all 3 people that we called out in one of our videos, and also 3 people that we have been trying to apply some pressure to. We're trying to apply some pressure to some people we thought might be on the edge about it, and it looks like we were kind of successful in applying some pressure to get Huff, Gooch, and Goforth to possibly change their votes. Who knows, though? Who knows? But I think perhaps us drawing attention had something to do with it. Of other note, the House overcomes the budgetary veto which basically the governor had line item vetoed the budget. They overcame all of them other than two. But what's of note, of course, was in that veto message was one that said if you pass this budget that had a line item in it that said you cannot expend money enforcing the mandates, the COVID mandates that don't follow SB 1. SB 1, sorry, you can't expend money enforcing mandates that you don't follow the passage of SB 1. Now, SB 1, once again, is that law that's in Judge Shepard's courts. And in that, they are in Judge Shepard's courts and held up. And the governors of mentioned that if this budget passed, which it did pass, so what that means is when it takes effect, July 1st, if they're following the letter of the law, the governor and the executive branch and the state cannot expend dollars enforcing any of the governor's mandates on July 1. What's that mean? I don't know. This is a weird situation because normally you just have a law that's passed and then the governor follows the law. But in this case, where it's injunctified and they're doing another way to stop the governor, the governor, I guess if he spends money, then he can be sued for doing that by the AG. I guess that's what they're setting up. So I guess come July 1 with this budget passing, we'll see what happens. I hope by then our lawsuit regarding HB1, SB1, and SB2 that we are in to end the governor's mandates, I'm hoping that actually does a better job of injunctifying this before July 1st. But if it doesn't and come July 1st, we're going to be in an interesting situation. Or does the governor go to the judge asking him to injunctify that part of the budget? And then that comes to the other question. Does the judicial branch have any say-so in that way over the budget? That is almost a sole power of the legislative branch, the power of the purse. So we are in some weird legal situations here. Weird legal situations. Very strange situations, and I don't know how they will play out. I just don't know how they will play out. I don't. I know for me, I'm in constant contact with my lawyer and everything else saying, hey, when can I post a video telling everybody to take off their masks? He can't do anything anymore. Nada boo boo. And my lawyer is letting me know when I can do that, officially do that. I mean, anybody who comes into Brood can make their own judgment on what we're doing, but I'm waiting to be able to publicly say, take it off. Doesn't matter anymore. He can't do anything. Whether that is he can't pay money to enforce it, whether that is the law has been passed, we'll see what that is. But what is also of note there is as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Felicia Rayborn, representative there Felicia Rayborn stood up there and she said, hey, speaking of him saying he would go around legislative immunity. Felicia Rayborn is from House District 47. That's Carroll, Henry, Trimble counties there. And he stood up and said, hey, she stood up and said, hey, the governor's threatening to go around legislative immunity. It's a legal doctrine that says that legislators can't be arrested for passing a bill. Sounds like a good legal doctrine to me. She stood up, she said, impeach! We should be impeaching him for doing so. I know I would be. And I got to say, Felicia, I agree with you. In fact, I'd take it one step further. Really, I would almost be just happy if they just impeached Judge Shepard right now. Remember, the legislators are, in Kentucky, we do not have three co-equal branches. The legislative branch is more powerful than the other two, mainly because they can impeach the other two officers or judges whenever they want to. They just have to have, the reasoning just has to be justified amongst them and have agreement. And one could say if they impeach Judge Shepard, who is now holding them up from holding him accountable like they said they would, that would also solve the problems and send a message to the judicial branch saying you can no longer keep running over our rights this way. We will hold you accountable. So I say impeach Bashir. I say impeach Judge Shepard. I'd say impeach anybody who's broken their oath of office. Right now, what Judge Shepard is doing is quite clearly a violation of his office. It's a violation of his oath. It's a violation of what the law stands for. You do not injunctify LRC and the AG from enforcing a law. The governor does that. You don't need to go to law school to know that. But yet that's what he's doing, creating all kinds of weird legal precedents. He's saying he thinks there's a pandemic exemption to legislative immunity. And case in controversy to long-held legal doctrines that date back a long time. He thinks that there is a pandemic exemption to the law. That's not the kind of judge we need around. The law does not exist for when it's easy. The law exists for these trying times. That's when your faith in the law has to stay. Your faith in what the law says, at least. Your faith in the process of the law, per se. You can disagree with the law and take a stand against it like we have. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. But your faith in the judicial branch to play it out, that's important. House Joint Resolution 77 passes. Now, with the bill that was passed in 2020, one would say House Joint Resolution 77 might also put an end to the emergency. Back in 2020, they passed a bill saying the legislators could vote to end a state of emergency at any time they'd like to. So they would say that based upon that bill, with the passage of House Joint Resolution 77, which listed out the governor's mandates they would continue, and they say all others should expire, that also will end it. We'll also see if the judge injunctifies that. So not only would we have one judge injunctifying 3 laws, but also injunctifying a House Joint Resolution, as well as injunctifying a budget. Please tell me why we don't impeach him. I can't figure it out. Because clearly that is not the place of the judicial branch. It's just not. It's not the place of it. So Felicia stands up, says we need to impeach him. We'll see what they do tomorrow. I don't think they do anything. In fact, I think they do worse than nothing. I think they try something squirrely on the gas tax. Whether that be a standalone bill or they try to slip an amendment on there, I've been hearing rumblings. I encourage you to call 1-800-372-7181. Once again, that's 1-800-372-7181. And leave a message for your legislator that says, don't vote for a gas tax. Don't vote for an amendment on a gas tax either. I am paying attention. I have a dog. I have a husky German Shepherd mixed dog. She's a wonderful, beautiful dog. If you ever see a picture of dog on Brood, it's probably her. She's kind of white, gray, she's a good-looking dog. See her in my pictures. My dog, Luna, you can let her out without a leash, and she will stay in the yard. However, the minute you take your eyes off of Luna, she legs it. She makes a break for it. So like for an example, today, I was working in the yard, and for 5 seconds, I take my eyes off the dog. The dog ends up 3-4 houses down trying to get pets from the utility contractor. I had to go up to the top, yell for her. She saw me. She came back. She doesn't need a lead or anything else. If I yell for her, she won't come. I have to make eye contact with her. I have to tell her I notice her. Why do I bring up that story about my beloved pupper? Well, quite simply, legislators are much the same way. If you let them know you've taken your eye off of them, they might try to get away with running on down a couple of houses and doing something they're not supposed to be doing. So go ahead, give them a call at 1-800-372-7181 and say, guys, no gas tax. Don't pass a gas tax. Don't do it. Don't do an amendment either. I have my eyes on you. Don't leave the yard. That might be a suggestion I have for you. Of course, we're going to have a lot more to talk about on Wednesday as far as state government goes because they have a few more days left. But I also want to take a second to talk about a rally this weekend that I will be speaking at, as well as it ties in nicely with a post we had earlier today. Earlier today, I had posted about the Nas X controversy. Now, those who don't know who Little Nas is, he is the Old Town Road singer. For you folks that might be older, that's that rap song that Billy Ray Cyrus is in. So you know who that is, maybe a little bit better will tell you about this guy. And he is he's an interesting fella. He is openly gay, which is fine. And however, he recently did a music video where he rode a stripper pole to hell and then gave a lap dance to Satan and then killed Satan and then wore Satan's crown. And in that same way, he decided to release the Satan shoe, which includes blood from, I'm not making this up, blood from the designers. So the designers, I guess, put a couple of their drops of blood in with the dye that they then use to dye the stitching of the shoe, if I understand this properly, to stitch in what they want to on the shoe. And the shoe also has a pentagram on it and quotes the Bible verse Luke 10:18, which is a funny verse actually to cite in this case because it talks about the devil's defeat. But then it has the shoe costs $1,018 and is being sold by a company called it's kind of called Mischief, but it's spelled weird. And they're selling 666 pairs of this shoe. And I'd posted about it because, quite frankly, I'd mentioned some other recent cancellations we had. Dr. Seuss, of course, Mr. Potato Head, but also, too, because it seemed very fitting, the Betsy Ross flag. And I said, where is the outcry of cancellation here? More as a commentary on where our culture is. However, a lot of people had a hard time grasping, how can I be for liberty while at the same time taking issue with Little Nas's shoe? It's quite simple. I don't want the government to do anything to stop the sale of Little Nas's shoe. I don't want my government legislating my morality. I don't want them doing that. Because I know that if I ask my government to legislate my morality, it can quickly be turned against me as what we are seeing now, where other people's morality start getting legislated against me. What I was doing, what we can do by making commentary, is simply taking note of a free market. A free market rewards, and a free market takes away. And by alerting people to what's going on, it might just stop people from buying the shoe, supporting this other company, supporting Nas X, and in turn showing that the culture does not reward this kind of behavior. That is nothing more than using free markets. Nothing more than voicing an opinion. The minute I step foot into asking my government to legislate this morality, that's when I begin to be against liberty. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll give you a great example of where perhaps somebody who morally has a problem with same-sex marriage, if you morally do, what's the liberty argument on that? Well, quite simply, the liberty argument is government should have never been in marriage to begin with. Marriage should be between you, the person you are marrying, and if you have a God, whoever that may be. The government shouldn't be an unwelcome third or fourth party. That is how you stay away from legislating your morality when you are for liberty, when you're for removing government from everyday life. I don't want government legislating morality. In fact, I want government removing itself from life and allowing us to go back to dealing with culture with government removed from it. In fact, I wish it. However, we do have to, as liberty lovers, engage in the culture war. What I mean by that is when we see something that is wrong, we have to call it out if we think it's wrong. And the reason why it matters, and I saw people commenting on there too as well, it's just a shoe. Don't even bother. It's just a shoe. Why do you care? If you don't think for 1 second this culture affects our legislation right now, you are sorely mistaken. If you don't think our culture affects what they teach in schools right now, you are mistaken. If you don't think our culture affects whether or not what our government can do, you're mistaken. Our culture allowed small businesses to be closed by government. Our culture allowed that to happen without a large uproar. Very few people stood up like we did. Our culture has allowed this to get this far. And we have to engage in the culture wars. And what I mean by that is we have to say, that's wrong. We don't like that. If you don't like something, say you don't like it. Engage in that conversation. But at the same time, do not call for government to legislate your morality. Call for government to remove itself from legislating morality and instead turn that over to the people it should be turned over to. It should be turned over to our communities. It should be turned over to our general communities, our neighbors, saying what they are okay with, what they aren't. See, in fact, when government wasn't legislating morality, you didn't see such extremes. And what do I mean by that? Of course, we saw hate and racism historically, sure. But what I mean is, and I'm not talking about back then, what I mean is we didn't see extremes like Dr. Seuss needing to be canceled or Betsy Ross shoe needing to be canceled while shoe made with human blood and has pentagram by famous rapper is okay. What we saw instead was more of a quote-unquote center because you were accountable to your culture. You're accountable to the people around you. It's very easy when you have a government legislating morality to use special interests and lobbying to achieve goals. That's why we can't allow government to be legislating morality. And listen, I don't want the government to step in and cancel this company. In fact, I'll take a step further. I don't want government involved in social media. In fact, I want government so removed from social media, controlling of the market, I want Facebook to be able to cancel you. I want Facebook to be able to deplatform you. But I also want the government to remove Section 230. See, this is where people get messed up on the liberty side of things, and we lose ourselves in arguments. We don't recognize that free markets means free markets. It means keeping the government from cronyism, from crony capitalism. How does that affect itself when it comes to social media? Well, we have Section 230 in this country that allows public utilities to be free from suing, to be free from crime. So if I plagiarize on Facebook or I steal trademarks, Facebook's not held accountable because it is a platform, not a publisher. That's their statement. What I mean is they can remove whoever they want to. They're a private company. But the minute they remove whoever they want to, they are now a publisher. They should lose their Section 230 protections. See, that's a free market. Because in a free market, if social media wasn't being protected by a cronyism government, they would be sued off this planet because the minute they try to censor anybody, they are now a publisher and they could be sued for anything anybody posts. That would be the protection against these platforms from deplatforming you. But instead we have cronyism by the government. At the end of the day, most of the time what people think might be tyranny from private companies can be easily traced back to government involvement protecting those companies. And by removing government from legislating morality, but also from our businesses, We're able to much more easily win back the culture wars and stop protecting governments from making decisions that work best for whoever seems to be in control of the power. Obviously, Democrats are in control of the power right now federally, so these social media companies are going to do whatever they ask them to do so they can get their treat and reward and be allowed to continue to operate. Because they're afraid of further legislation. And sometimes they're not. Sometimes they ask for certain legislation because it protects their market. It protects them from holding on to the market and prices out competitors. But at the same time, when we look at these social media companies and what they're doing, they're only able to do it because of the crony capitalism we have. And do not confuse crony capitalism with free markets. Do I think Little Nas's blood shoes should be sold? No. Will I buy it? No. In fact, I'd go as far as to say if I see somebody wearing those shoes, I would not be friends with them. I wouldn't talk to them. I'd go as far as to say any company that would sell those shoes, I will never go to. In fact, I'd probably go as far as to say any company that sells supplies to those shoes, I would try to not buy from. Because that is my choice. I'm not asking the government to do anything. I don't want it to. But when I make a comment about culture and I'm engaging in the culture wars, I don't want the government doing anything. I want us as a culture to stand up and say, no, that's not okay. We will not reward this with our money. We'll take it elsewhere. There's some nuance to that. But with that in mind, this Saturday I will be speaking at a rally. It starts at 12 at Frankfurt. It's a rally for faith and getting our faith free of government control. I invite you to join us. There'll be a lot of speakers out there. It'll be this Saturday. That'll be April the 3rd at noon on Frankfurt Capitol steps. I invite you out there. I will be speaking. There'll be some other pastors and speakers. And I know for me, what I'll be speaking about is, one, how does the church claim back itself from the government, becoming its own private entities like it is? How does it get its place back? But as well speaking about what I just did. How do you be a liberty lover and yet still have morals? It's quite simple, but yet still difficult. Don't ask your government to do anything to enforce your morals. Thanks, guys. Remember to share this. It's a podcast as well on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts. Share this out. Hit the share button. Click it. Click it now. I thank you, guys.